Councillors and management, I do hope this motion receives as much, and it should receive more attention than the last motion, not because the last motion wasn't relevant to this council, because I think we should be able to bring stuff that isn't necessarily under our remit, but because this motion in particular, of all the motions on the agenda, I think, not because it's my own by any means, but this motion is the most important one for our constituents and for those people who are in most in need in our county. Since being elected to this council, I've brought this issue up time and time with the council. The provision of social housing, giving someone the right to a home, I think, is the most important function that this council has. I was born in a council house. I still live in a council house, and I've made the point over and over that the new housing regulations have caused the utmost crisis in the provision of social housing. And had the new regulations actually been back in the 70s and the 60s, when the provision of good quality housing stock that we just praised a few minutes ago in this council, the reality is these houses would never have been built in the first place, and my family, a family of 7 children, would have been moved around various parts of the county as our housing needs change and adapt. So the worst thing about these new housing regulations is that they spell the end for the traditional sense of the provision of council houses, which is the obvious thing to do. It's the construction of council houses. It's given someone one of the most important things in life, which is a job, the next most important thing in life, which is a house. One would understand the ideological argument from the likes of Fine Gael, I understand, would rather push out the provision of social housing and privatise social housing. Correct me if I'm wrong in your response. But I can't understand a government that set out to provide people with housing, and indeed a Labour Minister for Housing. This issue has been brought up in the Council before, and Labour councillors have said to me, look, Councillor Lewis, if you aren't condemning our new regulations, if we're bringing a review of it, it would be supported. So I call on those councillors to support this motion. Every week I sit in a constituency clinic. I get about 60 or 70% of the people that come into me over social housing. The new regulations have caused tangential problems, and by that I say the cut to the rent caps has meant the people on a weekly, on a monthly basis are becoming homeless. I was in the Dáil for this debate myself. Minister Joan Burton said out straight that no one would become homeless as a result of this. I've had some terrible situations in this council. I'm never going to name names on this basis, obviously, but a lady with 5 children, for example, made homeless as a result of the rent caps. What landlord in the right mind would want 5 children for €925? As she said, the kids, would wreck the place compared to 1 or 2 children. So this lady went homeless. Her children went homeless, all as a result of the new housing regulations, which were trumpeted in this council when they came in. But we knew what would happen. It would spell the end of the provision of social housing and would mean the provision of Mickey Mouse housing, which has happened. I've said it time and time again. Every time I say it, I get a phone call the next day, so expect one tomorrow. The voluntary housing bodies are not adequate providers of social housing. Time and time again, problems come up in these estates that we have, such as Riverside and Honey Park, and they're not dealt with adequately by the infrastructure of housing bodies. And how could they be? You ring up an office in town, you've got a small office, about a fifth of the size of this room, in comparison to the huge infrastructure that the council body has. And I personally, I'm not one for trumpeting the antisocial section in here. I would constantly have regular problems with them. But at least you have a phone call to someone who has vast years of experience in the antisocial section, something that doesn't happen with these new bodies. They just aren't able to deal with it. So, to be quite honest, I mean, we could sit here and talk about this for hours, but we need to recognise, and we need to be honest with ourselves, the provision of social housing is not happening. What is happening is the strategic privatisation of social housing, because the vast majority of rented dwellings now in the country are in receipt of rent allowance. And we were told by the government that the reason they cut the rent caps was to cut the amount that landlords could charge. Absolute rubbish, of course. We wanted to do that. We just cut the amount that landlords could actually charge, not the amount that we give. But the result of that is people coming into this office, into this council, homeless, with no house, with no future council house. They know this at this stage. The word has finally gotten out there that the social housing stock is not getting built. I should recognise there are 100 houses, I'm sure it will be brought up, which is going to be built in the next couple of years. But in all fairness, with over 4,500 on the housing list, this is a Mickey Mouse response to what is one of the most serious and largest problems that we have in the council. So I'll leave it there. I'll wait to come back to see what the responses are. But we all know that the current housing regulations are not a solution to the housing problems. What is actually happening is the money that should be invested, the capital money that should be invested into the construction of social housing that traditionally was invested, is now being invested into the pockets of landlords. For example, if I was on rent allowance, I would get 10 grand a year, 10 years, that's 100 grand. Manager can correct me if I'm wrong, that's the price of a council house. But the current policy, after the 10 years has passed, they won't even have a window pane or a gutter to show for it. And the person that could have been working, building the house, is now sat in the dole. So it certainly makes no economic sense to be doing what we're doing. To say that the government or the country is in an economic crisis and a fiscal crisis could be argued, but certainly this solution to housing is only going to cost more in the short term and more in the long term. It doesn't provide adequate housing, it doesn't provide an adequate economic response to housing, and it's not efficient. In fact, I can't really find anything, to be quite honest, to bring much positivity to it. So I'll finish the introduction there, but I do sincerely hope that councillors, maybe they come back a second time. I'm not for rubbing things in people's faces, but I do hope that councillors will support this motion at this effort at this time.
Councillor Humphreys.